Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Briget Ganske. I'm a youth media producer at Student Reporting Labs. And we are so glad you are here with us tonight. We have a really big turnout. This is awesome. I think over 100 people registered, and I see a lot of you joining right now. We're just going to jump in. So this will also be recorded, and you can share with fellow students or watch it again, to catch anything that you might have missed the first time. But thank you so much for joining us. Again, we are recording this, just to let you know, and this is also a Zoom webinar versus a traditional Zoom meeting. So only the panelists have the power to turn their cameras on and their mics on. Though for the question and answer period time later on, we can unmute people who have questions. But just so you know, you'll see just the panelists during the presentation, and a few select students who volunteer to ask questions will come on later. But please use the chat, which everyone can see. Let us know where you're joining us from. I see a lot of people already doing that. And also let us know, we're wondering, what is your favorite podcast? Great, so yes, why we're here. Goals for tonight. Marcus, go ahead. Does that play the goals for the night? Yes, learn about Student Reporting Lab's partnerships with WellBeings, get tools for producing audio stories, and come away inspired, energized, and confident to produce your own audio story. So with me tonight, I'll just name the people and then pass it to them. With me tonight is Justin Rhodes, Senior Director for National Digital Content at WETA. WETA is the Washington area PBS station, so welcome, Justin. We also have Vika Aronson, who's the podcast producer for PBS NewsHour. So great to have Vika with us. And our third guest is Cheryl Aguilar. Cheryl is the founding director and lead therapist at Hope Center for Wellness in Washington, D.C. We were super excited to have Cheryl on this webinar because the theme of SRL's podcast is mental health. It's always good to have a professional on call to help answer tough questions. So Cheryl, would you like to hop on and just say hi, a few words?
Yeah, hi everyone. So great that you're here. I cannot see you, but I can feel your energy. And I just wanted to say, as a therapist, thank you for telling stories about mental health. We know how powerful stories are, and the more we tell them, the more we shatter stigma and allow people to find services with people like me and many of my colleagues. So thank you for your dedication.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. Next, I'm going to pass it to Justin Rhodes. As I mentioned, Justin works at WETA. He's an award-winning digital content producer. He has over 10 years of experience working on independent documentaries, feature films within the public media space. And one of his current projects is WellBeings. So I'll pass it to Justin.
Yep. Thanks, Briget. And really excited to talk to you all tonight. I'll save some of my comments for later, but just overall, it's really, really good to have a chance to connect with you and talk about, making podcasts. One of the core pillars of WellBeings is demystifying and destigmatizing our physical and mental health through storytelling. So this is a perfect event to connect with you, talk to you, share some tips and lessons learned, and then also hear from you guys. So looking forward to getting into the discussion. And I guess I'll get into it. The way we describe well-being is kind of overall, in addition to what I just said a second ago, is it's a multi-year campaign that addresses the critical health needs of Americans through broadcast content, original digital content, and impactful local events. One of the core pillars of our efforts is, well, people like you who are producing content for the mental health community or individuals you might know, or you just have a passion for the subject or topics under mental health. We have developed what we call a story wall to showcase the variety of stories we receive from young people just like yourselves who are producing videos, creating images, taking photos, whatever, doing like photo essays. The list goes on. We put it all together into a story wall, and you can really see this rich tapestry of content that we have available, in ultimately generating a community of hope and understanding and togetherness. I think oftentimes whenever you explore subjects under the mental health umbrella, you have a natural tendency to go into maybe the negative aspects of it, and maybe sometimes get stuck there. But it's always important to remember that there is hope. Kind of and Cheryl's organization is perfect, to be part of this conversation too, because that's what they do, provide the hope aspect as well. You will see, if you have a chance to explore, you're going to have a wide range of stories, topics, themes discussed there, all good examples for you to reference as you're exploring how to produce your work. Two things I want hopefully you guys can take away tonight that I'll share, and then there are tons of technical things we can get into as well. But the two overarching things that I think about as a content producer are the following. Number one thing that guides everything we do on the digital team is authenticity. That is something that you cannot fake or pretend. It is the most organic way to connect to your audience, your listeners, your viewers, whatever. And it is something that you should always lean into. It can be challenging if you're not necessarily comfortable with the subject matter or the style of interview you might be trying to do. But it's important to always lean into those authentic moments, those natural conversations, those moments of emotion and passion, because that's always going to be your best stuff. Those really high points throughout your project, your development of the project. The other thing is, and this is always helpful for me, is to begin with the end in mind. So if you have a vision of where you're going, you can take the steps to get there. Sometimes, and it's kind of breaking maybe in some ways the mold of how you're taught in school. You start, beginning, middle, end, and you're trying to fill in the gaps along the way. Sometimes you have to flip it and say, okay, I know I want to end up with this moment, or this beat at the very end of this piece, or my overall objective is this. What are the steps I need to do to take there? How do I need to produce this? What are the elements I need to pull in to get this executed in this way? And we can dive into some other things later, but I just wanted to share those two things.
Great, thanks, Justin. That was super powerful. So on to student reporting labs. Our assignment, or one of our assignments this winter, is mental health podcast overall series called Here For You, which I know many of you students are working on now. So to help us sort of make the best audio stories we can, we have Vika Aronson, who, as I mentioned, is the podcast producer at PBS NewsHour, and she has a lot of experience to share and some tips for us. So on to you, Vika.
Okay, awesome. Can everyone hear and see me all right? I hope so. I see.
We hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah. I see the podcast recommendations rolling in and people's favorites. It's awesome to see. Thank you. Keep them coming. I know that I'm pulling some ideas for myself to go listen to after this. So I hope you guys are too. So as Briget said, I'm Vika Aronson. Thanks so much for the introduction. I'm going to be really brief about myself because I want to get to the good stuff about how to make podcasts. But basically, I started out producing radio in 2014. I did an apprenticeship program at a public radio station in Berkeley, California, just because I was like devouring podcasts for about a year and thought, like, I really want to get myself into this line of work. So I started out there producing features, interviews, hosting the radio show, doing all kinds of cool stuff there, a whole wide range of content. I moved to DC in 2019 or 2018 and got a job at PBS NewsHour producing podcasts here. And it's been amazing. It's been a really, really great time. So we've produced 3 series so far. 2 were mini series. One that I'll shout out here, that's Broken Justice, which is a criminal justice podcast that you guys should definitely check out. I recommend it. We worked really hard on it. It's something I'm really proud of, about the public defense crisis in America and the way that poor defendants face a different justice system from everybody else, basically. And now we're producing a show called America Interrupted, which is about COVID-19. It's about racial injustice and reckoning. It's about, it was about the election. It's about politics. It's about everything. So that's what I'm working on these days. Go to the next slide. Awesome. Okay, so these are some of my favorite podcasts. I just wanted to shout out for you guys really fast. Invisibilia, Mystery Show, More Perfect, which is a Radiolab project. I saw somebody likes Radiolab out there, me too. It's awesome. More Perfect is like a Supreme Court Constitution show. It's amazing. This American Life is like everybody's favorite show, probably everyone who likes radio. It's one of the reasons I'm in public radio and podcasts now. Okay, and the next thing I wanted to do with you guys was to play a couple samples of audio that I just think is outstanding and can be instructive for us today. So the first one I'm going to share with you is from This American Life. It's a piece called from the show called The Show of Delights. It's fantastic, and there's a link there in the slide for you if you want to listen to the full thing. I just want to play a clip for you, but basically what it is, just to give you a setup, is we're listening to a conversation between 2 podcast hosts, actually, who, it's very meta, who have worked together, and one of them has struggled, her name is Tracy, has been struggling with depression, and the other one, whose name is Bim Adewunmi, she is the interviewer in this case, and they worked together, and Bim had no idea Tracy was struggling with depression when they were working together. And so, yeah, let's listen to that.
My shoulders are working. Hit him with the shoulders. Hey, hit him with the shoulders. Hey.
It was a ridiculous time.
That seems like so much fun.
It was the funnest episode. And I think afterwards, I was chatting to you and it was like, okay, well, we finished that up. We, done recording. And I was what you up to for the rest of the day. And you said, back to bed for a depression nap. Like the minute the mic went off, you were just kind of like, all right.
Yeah. Back to my real life. That's very true.
You remember that at all?
No, not that. I mean, I remember that episode and that stuff, but I don't remember the depression nap stuff. And I think that's because I was depressed and like your memory just it's not there. Also, every day feels like another day and another. It's just like, I couldn't even tell you like what year that happened.
So I wanted to play that clip for you guys because it shows a couple different elements. You heard the clip from the podcast they were in together at the very top, which was just like fun-loving, girls having a good time together. And then they moved to another scene, which was their interview together, where Bim was asking Tracy, hey, do you remember this moment we had? And you told me you were depressed. I had no idea. And then Tracy kind of reflects on that moment. And what I love so much about this whole piece, which I should definitely go back and listen to, is like, the first thing is they're talking about a really serious topic, really serious mental health topic, which all of you guys are going to be doing in your podcast pieces. But like, they bring levity and friendship and like intimacy to it in a way that's really powerful. And I think that that's how you get your audience to really care about a character is to get to see them in a different light and not just like through the lens of their mental health problem. But you get to see them, being their like brightest selves too. And often that comes with like a moment of levity. So if you can bring that into your work, I think that's really great. And I know a lot of you guys are going to be talking to people so you already have like intimacy relationship with your character, so that you already have a leg up when it comes to that. Also, I liked the various use of elements, which I kind of talked about. And then another awesome thing that Bim did as the interviewer is she pointed to a specific moment that Tracy could connect with and say like, hey, let me take you back to this time and like really put you there. And then like, you tell me how you experienced it. Cause like, this is how I experienced it. How did you experience it? And I thought that was a really cool device. And I think can be really helpful in a lot of different interviews. Let me play the Michigan radio next. No, the third one. Sorry, the third one. Thank you so much.
From the moment you wake up, it's go, go, go. You pick out your clothes, grab breakfast if there's time, then it's off to school. Then after school, there's rehearsals, practices, working out, tutoring, hanging out, homework, procrastinating, texting, snapping, scrolling. But finally, it's time for dinner.
Wait, Lacey led the two of spades,
Yeah, so
right?
she's gonna get it unless mom.
Maybe you play a game of hearts with your family before bed. But why are we going this way?
All right, hurry, go to bed, buddy. Come on. Bedtime.
Good night, Henry. Once we all go to our rooms, the house is quiet, lights are off, doors are closed. And suddenly, we're left alone with our thoughts. What college am I going to go to? How am I going to pay for college? When were they hanging so many followers compared to me? I wish my life looked like that. I wonder what happened at that party I missed.
Are they mad at me?
So I wanted to play this clip for you guys because it is just such a great example of like one thing that I think is really important, which is layering sound. Like your pieces are going to be so much richer the more types of different elements you layer on top of each other. So the best example of that is at the very end, right, where you have the host or the interviewer's track, and then she comes in with like music, drops, and then you hear like her, I think it's her voice, listing off the different thoughts in her head, and it's one after the other, and they're kind of piling up onto each other, and it creates this really interesting effect, right? And you like listening to it. So that was something that really stood out to me that I think is just a great tip and something to keep in mind, keep your audio interesting. Another thing I liked about this was how natural this person's track was. And I liked that she spoke in the second person. I don't know if you guys caught that, but it was like, you go to dinner, you play spades with your family. And it kind of, it flips your perspective a little bit. And she could have been talking about herself. She could have been talking about somebody else, but the fact that it was in the you, like really puts yourself in there. And then also like the scene that we heard of, I think it was somebody's father, her father maybe, setting the table. And, that really puts you there, right there. So I don't think we have time for the BBC one, unfortunately. So we'll just have to, I can maybe come back to that if we have time. Okay, so now I want to share my screen with you guys, which I think I should be able to do here. Okay, just let me know if this is working. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So I wanted to show you guys my organization for how at the NewsHour we organize our podcasts and how like pre-production goes for us at the NewsHour. So I have these things called everything docs. You can see on the top there, it's literally called an everything doc because we throw everything here, but we try to keep it as organized as possible so it's not just like a pile. And it's in Google Docs, which you guys can use. Everybody has access to that, right? So I do like a table of contents at the top, which is awesome because it's like, it does like links to like chapters lower down basically. And you can just like quickly go down if you have a really long document, which mine always are. You can just like quickly skip down to that section. So this is for an episode we did a few weeks ago about the Georgia Senate runoff election. And so our first section here is the show outline, where you can put in there like sound that you're going to use. It's basically just to like be able to take a quick scan at this thing and know what the show is going to entail. Then we have the production schedule / plan. This was around the holidays, so a lot of people were off actually. So it was super helpful to have a production schedule because we needed to know who was off when. And then the host preps. Then we tape. This was the interview taping. In this case, we only did like one interview for this episode. And so we just did that taping. Then we have to do a paper cut after that, which is where you like put everything on the page, the script, like a physical script. Then we have the first cut of the audio. Then we have the audio with the music done. I know I have to go through this quickly. Then the next section is like your pitch, which I'm sure you guys are going to have to produce. Everybody in this field is pitching and sending that pitch through their senior producer and then to the executive producer. So that is all very standard, and I'm sure practice you guys are going to have too. Finally, when you get to the stage of making your episode description, which is going to show up on your podcast page or in your app, we put that here. Then we have like all of our research, all of the links that we, because I have a co-producer when I work on this, so I'm going to want to share information with them, and then also the host of the podcast. So this is all information we want to share together, links to articles and things, reporting. We have a possible voices section when we're just kind of, again, sharing ideas and deciding on who our voices are going to be, who our characters are going to be. And so we put that information here so everybody can see it. Then when we need to prepare our host who is going to be conducting the interview on what questions to ask and what points to hit on in the interview. So this is our interview prep section. Andrea Gillespie is the one we talked to for this episode. So we have like points she needs to hit, and then we have questions for her. And then even within the questions, we have things that we want her to say. Like we have an idea because we've heard her do these interviews before. And so we know how she's going to answer the question. So we're kind of trying to really guide the interview. You guys are going to be maybe doing this a little bit differently because these are going to be kind of more off the cuff interviews and more spontaneous, which is awesome. And so if you definitely want to plan out your interview for sure. But as far as like whether the person's gonna, how they're gonna answer the question, that's okay. You wanna have a plan, but it doesn't need to be quite as choreographed as this for what you guys are doing. Then we have like a section for sound that we wanna include and like other notes. Oh, we have, this is important. This is where we put our script, the link to our script document, which is another document. That is about it for that. Another really important tool that I use all the time, which I hope you guys will have access to, is Trint. You guys probably have used Trint before, but basically it is a transcription software, and you can highlight and do your selects of the interview in here. And then you can export it so you can listen to the interview and make your selects at the same time. And it does a pretty good job of transcribing. You're gonna have to clean it up, but it does a really decent job. And then you can export it to a Word document and then put that in a Google Doc and kind of work from there, whittling it down more and more and scripting it, adding track, adding other sound, adding other elements, working with your team to kind of get it into the shape you want it to be. So I think that's all I wanted to share for the Trent. How am I doing on time?
Yeah, you're doing great on time. If you want do you need a few more minutes to talk a little bit more about your process?
Yeah, I think there are a few more things. Yeah, there are a few more things. Can we show the presentation again?
Yeah.
Just one me. Okay, great. I think I have, oh, okay, it's already student questions. Okay, in that case, yeah, I'll just say a couple more things if I have another minute. Maybe we'll just play that BBC clip if we have time. Thank you so much.
Pilgrim's Hospice, Margate. It's early, very early, in the morning. Claudia, the hospice cat, stalks quiet corridors. The nurse, with the drug keys in her pocket, jangles as she walks. Zoe has nearly finished her shift.
You get to know your patients more on a night shift, I find. And sometimes nighttime you can be sitting with them all night, trying to calm them or just be with them.
How do you calm them?
Just talk to them, or sometimes just sitting there holding their hand is good enough for some patients.
Has anybody told you a story that's really touched you?
Yeah, quite a few times.
What's it like when somebody tells you a story like that?
Oh, you feel lucky.
So I should have given this a bit of a setup, but this is a story about hospice care. And what you heard was the very top of the piece. And so what I think is really interesting is it just drops you straight into what's going on. This was like a straight up cold open. It wasn't like in the middle of the piece, it was at the very top. And it's produced by one of my favorite producers, Kathy Fitzgerald, who talks about how she wants her audience to levitate. And she makes me feel that way. Like I don't, and I want you guys to listen to the whole piece, obviously, but she is just so powerful in her storytelling. And I think it's the poetic kind of nature of her track. The fact she's talking about the hospice cat. She says something like the hospice cat, it's like a late night for the hospice cat or something like that. You know, it's the perspectives that she takes and the kind of poetry of her track. And also the scene setting and the gnats sounds and all of that. And also what I like too is the question that the soundbite that she kind of started with from the person she was talking to was about, you know, during the night shift, I really connect with my patients. And, you know, that's an anecdote that like you wouldn't necessarily start with if you were just explaining what hospice care is. If you were doing kind of more of a clinical explanation, it's a really intimate moment and somebody really expressing themselves, and they're just dropping you straight into that moment. So I thought all of that was really effective. But yeah, I think we can go to questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Vika. I'm so impressed by your organization and just all the planning and all the research and all of, you know, the different people that are involved. I think when we hear a podcast, you know, finished product, it's so easy just to become immersed in it and not to think about all the work that went on behind the scenes. So thank you so much for sharing that. We have a couple students who volunteered ahead of time to ask questions. So they are on our panelist group here. So first, Sierra and Chantel from Hughes STEM High School in Cincinnati, Ohio have a question. And if you guys can just briefly tell a little bit about the story that you guys are producing and then go ahead and ask your question, that would be great.
Okay, my name is Chantel, and our story is focusing on anxiety and depression within the friendship of me and Sierra. So we've been friends since 7th grade, and we pretty much seen each other grow up and helped us through each other's issues with our mental health. So we really want to focus on that and focus on the opinions of people from the outside looking in on how our friendship has improved our mental health.
Excellent, great, thanks for that background. And then Sierra, did you want to ask the question that you guys have?
Yes, so basically we wanted to know, like, how could we get like a good interview while like still sounding like friends? Like, we don't want to sound too animated. Like, we want to have like be able to carry a casual conversation but also get the interview across.
Well, I'll take that. So it's very fortunate that you guys are friends, because you eliminate that first layer of uncomfortability that you sometimes have when you do an interview with somebody you don't know, which is you know each other. So you can, and this is what I was saying earlier about authenticity, right? You can lean into a natural way you guys converse, and whatever that may be, just to start the conversation. And through that, you'll find that you're able to actually start talking openly and freely and succinctly about, whatever it is you guys are discussing. But sometimes it does take you to, and you guys, I think, have a unique example here because you already know each other. But if you're able to lean into that a little bit more and use that relationship and that camaraderie that you already have, I think that'll be a really good way for you to start really getting into the meat of your podcast. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, if I could just add really quick, I think maybe take a listen to that episode of This American Life that I was talking about before, because it is exactly what you guys are talking about, the situation you guys are talking about. And I love that you guys are friends. I think that kind of, and Justin alluded to that too. I think and I love you guys being animated. Like, I think that that's going to drive this piece, and I think it's going to make it what it is, and it's going to make it really, really engaging. And I think that you should make a virtue of that as much as you possibly can.
Vika, so like thinking about how they still might want to like plan it out, or like have some kind of like points that they want to touch on. Like, do you like write things out? Do you encourage people to do that? Or do you encourage people to have like outlines? What would kind of keep them on track, but still like, I don't know, make it seem really natural?
Sure. I think as much as you can talk about specific stories, I think the story is what what you're going to use as your guide. And so, what is the story of your friendship, first of all, like broad strokes? And how did you guys get, like, what made you get closer? Like, what brought you guys close, and what made you close friends? What are your kind of touchstones of that? And then, what, I obviously don't know the ins and outs of your story, but it sounds like the mental health piece of it had an impact, whether it, cracked your friendship, did it break your friendship, what did it do to your friendship? That's another like turning point in this piece that we have to talk about. So, and then kind of like, where are you guys now? So, I would outline like, what are those critical moments, and make sure to hit on those critical moments of your friendship and let that be your guide. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, and sorry, Briget, Vika, you just triggered something in my head, just hearing your feedback there. I don't want to gloss over the fact that what you guys are talking about is a very heavy subject. So it's hard to casually get into, this conversation. And actually, Cheryl, I'm throwing you a curveball, but I think you might be able to speak a little bit, since you interview people all the time for your web series. You might be able to share some advice about how to have difficult conversations with people you know or don't know. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No problem. Let's see if I can tackle that. I just want to say, I'm really impressed by everything I've heard today. And Chantel, I really appreciate you wanting to share the story, your story, and yours and your friendship. It takes a lot of courage to share stories. I see journalism and mental health as pretty similar. It takes a lot of trust for people to open up with us, and I cherish that trust. So kind of coming back to Justin and his question, You know, I would say that I think recognizing that sharing something that is deeply personal is something to value. And if it's either we're kudoing ourselves or valuing ourselves for having the courage to open up, or we're expressing that with someone else, we're letting them know that we appreciate them sharing their stories and appreciate this trust. Another thing that I will kind of keep in mind is that someone may be willing and ready to tell your story and agree to it today, and they may change their mind tomorrow. It's really important that people know that they have control of their story, that if they feel uncomfortable as they're talking to you, that we can always pause. We can always take a few deep breaths. We can always come back. And I don't know how that works in terms of deadlines, if you have a deadline that you have to meet, but just keeping in mind that someone may say yes today and they may get nervous, and just recognizing and going back to sharing with them, like, we understand that this may be hard and we can take as much time as we can, if that is possible within your timeline and deadline, or having a backup plan, I guess, in case someone backs out of your story. I would, when possible, I would just create the space. And what that means is letting people be with their emotions when they need to be with their emotions. Someone may get teary-eyed and not rushing through that question. People, all of us have like 3 basic needs: to be seen, understood, and heard. We have many needs, but those are 3 very important ones that I think interconnect with journalism. How can we help people be seen? How can we help people be heard? And how can we help them feel understood? So I would say thank them for the time. Let them know they're in control. We can always pause. And one thing I would add, and I don't know if this goes against what we may need to do in terms of our work and getting something done, I would also ask if they want to see their story before it gets published. And you have to check with whoever you're working with to see if that's possible, and to see if that's within your parameters to do. Because once a lot of the people that you're going to be working with might not have a sense of control, and that's one thing that they can have a choice in. Yes, let me see it. And it doesn't mean that you're going to go and change things, but it will help people feel like they're really taking care of my story, and are really taking it seriously, and my feelings are important in all of this.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sierra and Chantel, for asking that question. Next up, we have Sanal from Dominion High School in Sterling, Virginia. And Sanal, if you could also give just a brief background of the story that you're working on, and then your question.
Hi, so I'm Sanal, and I'm doing a profile on one of my longtime friends who battles anxiety and depression and has panic attacks. And we already have a really great rapport. So we had a really long and detailed conversation. Briget can attest to this. There was 30 pages of the transcript. But when I got to the editing process, I found it really difficult to cut down a really long recording session for the sake of time, because I think a lot of great things were said, and every part of the conversation is important, especially when you're telling a really powerful story about someone else. So I was wondering, how do you go about this process and decide what to cut while also maintaining the structure and value and authenticity of the story? And what advice do you have for students who might also be struggling with this process?
Should I take that question? Should I start? Okay. Well, Sanal, thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for sharing a little bit of the background of the piece, and for being here. And I would just say that this is the eternal dilemma of journalism. Like, we producers just get so attached to our tape, and I've been in your shoes many, many times. So I would say the first thing is that, especially in this piece that you're given, this assignment, that's a 5-minute assignment, right? I think I have that right. And so you have very little time to get to the essence of what your story. And the first thing you should do is think about the ways that you can summarize your friend's story in track, which I hope you guys know the terminology. I mean, like, when I say track, I mean the spoken, like your interviewer narration, if you will. So if there are, as much as you possibly can, you want to condense moments in her story down to those to track, so that you can then just use sound to accentuate those moments with, you know, her feelings. Like, you know, you say X, Y, and Z person, you know, went to the store and then went to school that day, and something really, you know, triggered her, and then you hear her moment in her sound saying, like, you know, and that was the worst day, it made me feel X, Y, and Z way. So it really, sound should really be used as an accent, especially in these super short pieces. And you will get your chance in a longer format to do longer interviews, but this is kind of just it's just the luck of the draw, and it's just kind of the constrictions of what you're working with. And I think I'll leave it there for now. Let Justin add.
Yeah, I mean, you covered a lot of it. I'll just say this was my second point from earlier about beginning with the end in mind. So you know what you want your piece to be about, and part of the journalism process is staying laser focused on that. You have to turn off the emotions of it all and focus on did I tell the story I wanted to tell here? And hopefully you've done that through the process of capturing the story. Whatever you have left could either be repurposed into something else, or, you know, it's just gone. The trailer we looked at earlier that you guys saw, that's a year's worth of filming. That's 3 different subjects, you know, all condensed down, hours and hours of footage, all condensed down to a minute and a half. I guarantee you there's plenty left that we did not use and will probably never see the light of day. And that's just part of the process, you know. So this is what you're touching on is just a core journalism mindset that you develop over time. You know, there's no way you're going to be able to use every piece of everything you capture, whether it's, you know, the most emotional thing you've ever heard or inspiring thing you've ever heard. If it doesn't fit your story that you're telling, or the interview that you're conducting, you got to leave it. You know, it's just how it goes.
We have a great question in the chat from Zenway. Zenway, can we unmute you so you can ask your question? Marcus is going to help with that. He's our tech person.
Hi, Bridget. Were you referring to me? I wasn't sure.
Yes. If you want to turn your camera on, you can, or we can just hear you. Either way.
Oh yeah, sure.
Hi.
I guess I just wanted to ask is that our school is developing the podcast for sure under your lab, and obviously now with mental health, with COVID, distance learning, there's a lot of like topics surrounding that, right? So what we wanted to do is to create something innovative, but yet not so cliche in a way. I guess my real question is like regarding this, everything that's going on, is there something underlying regarding mental health that I as a student perhaps am not seeing? I don't know if that makes sense.
So Zenway, your question is like, are there things about like adolescent young people's mental health that like you may not be aware of because you're like so in the world of a young person, but that is something you should tell a story about? Is that your question?
Yes. So if there's something outside of it that you guys as like professionals see being involved in this industry for so long, aside from, you know, the obvious, if, you know, students having a very difficult time with distance learning, are there anything else that?
I think, and you may have accidentally stumbled into this, but you are presenting a unique story right now. Your perspective as a student is something that we don't have. We are well removed from school, and asking your peers about what they're going through, what their reactions are, or how they're living with COVID and the COVID world now, is a story. And I think you'll find you will get many unique responses if you were to canvass all of your friends. There's something to that I think you should maybe think about fleshing out. And it's an angle that on our end, we would seek out to find. We would want to have, young people like yourself capture those authentic stories, those unique perspectives, and we would weave it into, a larger piece or its own piece, whatever but I think you're on to something. That just kind of triggered a thought in my head. So congratulations, we helped you with your project.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, just thinking about like story ideas. So there's a couple of ways I think you can go think about like, how do we find a story? One is like a topic really interests you, like let's say OCD. And then you go out and you find someone who can be your character for that story about OCD. Another way is like you just know someone and you're like, you get to know someone and you hear their story and you're like, that would be a story. Your story is the story that I want to tell. So there's kind of two different angles. Like you know the topic and you find the character, or you start with the character and you build the story around them. So either way, I mean, you're both, the heart of your story is still the character, but you can approach it from those two different directions. Great. Thanks, Zenway. We have another question from John Terry. John, would you like to ask your question? Can we unmute John? Great, might take a second. And again, you can turn your camera on if you want to, or you could just ask your question. And we can't hear you, although it looks like you're not muted. Yeah, still can't hear you. I will just read your question. Sorry about that technical glitch. John asks, what's the best way to get an independent podcast to a wider audience?
That's a great question. You want me to take that?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. It's a great question. So there are a few different ways that you can get more attention to your work and then hopefully have it reach a wider audience if that's your goal. There are competitions and contests galore. There is one that I know of off the top of my head, done by a company called Third Coast. They do a thing called Third Coast Audio Festival every year, which is an amazing thing. If you get a chance to go, you should definitely either visit it online or go in person in Chicago once the world is back to normal. But it's an amazing resource for podcast producers, and they do a contest for independent reporters, journalists, producers, and get attention to those projects more widely. They also, in addition to like their awards, they also have, I forget what it's called, but it's something where they pick something voices. I'll have to look it up, but essentially they pick like producers from around the country to highlight their work and be their like Third Coast voices. There are several things like that. There are also different networks, different podcast networks that that you can pitch your series to, that are like some more independent, some bigger. There is one called Radiotopia, which will survey, like you can apply to be a part of their network and then get wider audience that way. There are other more major networks like Gimlet, which is a part of Spotify. There are several others. I'm blanking on them. Wondery is another one. There are many networks that if you can get in with, you can reach a wider audience that way. But all of that takes a ton of work and really honing your craft. And so it takes a while before you can get to that point. But that is kind of, if that's the direction you want to go, like those are the steps you can take, the places you can go to.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
It does.
Awesome, great. Well, I just want to keep track of time and show you that we do have some other podcast resources in this presentation. And again, we'll make this presentation available afterwards along with the recording. And so you can click on these links. But we just put out a level up video tutorial on how to produce a podcast. You'll maybe recognize Sonal there. She helped film the B-roll for that. So thanks so much, Sonal. We also have a one-page guide. Marcus, if you keep, yep, there it is, one-page guide on audio storytelling. And then Third Coast, like what Vika was just mentioning, they're a great website with tons of resources on it. And How Sound is another great resource, good site there. And then going to the next slide, we also on our Student Reporting Lab's website have a whole bunch of mental health resources. Here we are. And this is at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources. This scrolls down a lot. There's tons of pages or resources listed after this. This is just a screenshot of the first few. But whatever you're reporting on, it's always great to be aware of the different resources that are available for whatever topic you're reporting on. And as we package your stories, we're going to put your stories into different episodes, and we will make sure we have disclaimers and resources at the end. Marcus is pulling up the actual site. Thanks, Marcus. So just so you know that we will help all of you students kind of make sure that we are listing the right resources when we publish your stories. So because that's something super important, that as listeners, we're giving people places to go to for anyone who needs help. And yeah, I think we're kind of wrapping it up. The last slide is just, we'd love to hear from all of you in the chat, or if anyone wants to kind of raise your hand, there's this raise hand function. What are kind of the takeaways that you are taking away tonight? Things that you have learned? Love to hear some thoughts from all of you guys. And what I'm seeing here on this tips, is this Vika, did you want to talk about this?
Sure, I kind of added it in last minute. I hope that's okay, Bridget.
Yeah, totally. Sorry, I would
love
like your other slide. So.
That's okay. I would love to hear from the students on what they took away, but I'll just run through this really fast. Some tips to keep in mind: layer, as in layer your sound and all your different elements to make your piece sonically rich. Levity whenever possible, and I'll just put a caveat. Based on what I've heard from others here tonight, is at the same time, you want to listen, and you want to make sure that the person you're talking to feels heard, and certainly want to take their situation seriously, because it's important we do that around mental health and really all the other kind of journalism that we do. I would also say kind of the best answers come from when you surprise your interview subject. Also look for those specific moments and stories that you can kind of delve into and get deep on. Make sure to make your track sound more natural. Read aloud, and really listen to yourself and make sure it's something that you would actually say to your friend or family member. This shouldn't sound stilted or stiff. Also have somebody else listen to you and kind of coach you in the background and poke you and prod you and say, Vika, you'd never say that. You'd actually never word anything that way. So why don't you say it a little more naturally? Summarize as much as you can in track, and use your sound for accent. Also, this should be fun. So play and keep up that sense of play and fun. And, we talked about all of our favorite podcasts at the beginning of this. Mimic your favorite stuff. This is the art of copying people. That's how we learn, and that's how we do well, is just you mimic the things that work and sound awesome, and you do what they do. So that's it.
Great, thanks. And I just want to read a few that were in the chat. John says, I love the second person narration idea. Dylan agrees. And Audrey says, begin with the end in mind. Grace, be genuine, make your guest comfortable, try to relate to the audience and have an outline, not a script. Have an outline, not script. Yeah, begin with the end in mind. Awesome. All right, great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Again, we will provide a recording of this and the slides. And we'll also be sending a sort of takeaway quick survey so you guys can let us know what you really enjoyed from this and if you'd want to do one of these again. But thank you all for joining us, and please take care. You know, the topic of this is mental health. So please, you know, take care everyone, and hope you all have a great evening. So thanks so much.